So I was 40 something years old, still waiting tables, still hadn't really sold anything. And I was lying in bed 1 in the morning and just hating my life, hating how old I was, hating my lack of success. And it was like there was an advisor sitting on the edge of my bed saying, "What are you doing? How are you going to solve this? What do you think you're doing with yourself? You got to fix this. You have got to fix this. What are you doing?" And I tossed and I turned and I tossed and turned until I finally just got up, got out of bed so I could try to clear my head. And I left my bedroom where my wife was sleeping, crept out to the living room. I sat there on our couch in the darkness, didn't turn on the light. My kids were asleep. And I sat there and I said, "Okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to solve this." I mean, it was like there was a noose around my neck and that advisor was holding it, saying, come on, fix this. And so I sat there saying, I got to fix this. And as I did, a thought came into my head, and it was this: God is evolution. Now, the reason this wasn't the first time I thought that. This was at a time when two authors, Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins, had both published books sort of going after organized religion and Christianity and how anti-scientific it was. And it was a big sort of public deal, and there was a lot of discourse between creationists and scientific materialists about what is reality and what is life and what is God and what is it, back and forth. And I was surprised at the time because I kind of thought, I didn't realize how alive that debate still was. And so as I listened to these two sides, that's the thought I had. God and evolution are one and the same thing. It's a very interesting idea, philosophically, spiritually to me. And I would sometimes think about it as I went for walks or went for runs. It wasn't like the novels I was trying to write at that time. It was different, and it felt different when I thought about it. And I felt different when I thought about this idea, just the sort of big philosophical nature of it. Okay, so there I am sitting, trying to figure out my life, and that's the thought that comes to me. And as I often did when I would have that thought, because it seemed true even though I didn't understand it. And so what I would often do in my imagination is imagine I was talking to someone about it, because sometimes explaining to someone else is a great way for you to learn something yourself. And so I sat there, and as soon as that thought came in, I was like, oh, that's right, that's a good thought. And so I felt that urge to teach it, to explain it so I could understand it myself. But in my imagination, I didn't see one person sitting in front of me. No. In my imagination, I was in an auditorium, and I was in a spotlight and behind a podium with a microphone, and there was an audience, 100, 200 people there. And they all want to know about this, why God and evolution are the same thing. And in my imagination, I began to tell them, I began to talk. And it was enjoyable understanding this interesting ideas. And in my imagination, again, the audience sat there. They wanted to hear it. They were very attentive. And as I was doing this, though, that advisor, he was still sitting next to me, and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? This isn't going to solve anything. You're just playing in your imagination. We came out here to fix this, to fix it, remember?" And I said to him in my mind, yeah, I know. I will, I promise. But right now, I just want to do this. And so I went back to it. And for the next 15 minutes, I spoke in my mind again, purely in my imagination, to this imaginary group sitting in this imaginary hall. And it felt so good. It felt so good to be interested in something, to just be exploring it and to be sharing it with others. There's nothing better than sharing what you're interested in with other people. And also, I noticed how enjoyable it would be to be in a sort of auditorium setting to a group of people. I would like speaking to groups, I thought to myself. I would like public speaking. That seems like a great blend of the theater I did when I was young and the sort of thoughts I have begun exploring since then, a good blend of all my interests. And so this went on for about 15 minutes, talking to this imaginary group about why God is evolution. And after about that time, I reached the end of a thought, and I realized I had nothing else to say at that moment. And so the people went away, and the walls of the auditorium went away, and the microphone and the spotlight went away, and I was back in my living room. And the advisor and all his concerns and all my fear and all my worry was gone. I couldn't find it. Problem, such as it was, appeared, for the time being, to have been solved. But to be clear, nothing had changed. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was going to get up the next day, go to the same job, and do the same thing. But all my worries were released. And I got up from the couch and I walked back to bed to get the rest I knew I needed. And even though I didn't know what I would do from that moment forward, I didn't know concretely what I would do, I was reminded of something very important that writers in particular maybe need to know, which is about the power of the imagination. The power of the imagination to create problems where they don't exist, and the power of that same imagination to dissolve those problems when it is trained on something I actually care about. Thanks for listening. As always, if you don't want to miss anything, you got to hit subscribe. That's the easiest way. And if you like it, hey, say so in the comments, right? That's a great way to keep the conversation going. I love to hear from you, and I always try to respond. So until next week, this is Bill Kenower. Stay fearless.